This is the One Pebble Podcast. I'm your host, Kristine. Welcome to the One Pebble Podcast. It is my great joy and honor today to have guest Pastor Keith Kerstetter. Pastor Keith, thank you so much for saying yes and being a part of the One Pebble Podcast.
Well, Kristine, thanks for having me. This is going to be a hoot.
It's going to be a hoot, and I'm really excited to get into your heart and who you are and learn so much more about you today. I want to first read your bio so I and the listeners can become more familiar with who you are. You have a liberal arts degree from Grove City College, a master's degree from Indiana University in Pennsylvania. Your work history is you were a director of juvenile court in Charleston, South Carolina, community education administrator from Hopkins, Minnesota, business administrator and executive pastor in Bloomington AG, and formerly our senior pastor here at Willmar AG. You accepted Christ in your early 30s. You're married to the lovely Cindy, who I know, and you were married in 1988. You have 4 kids, 3 boys that are married. Your youngest, Anna, is a junior at Dordt College. 5 grandkids, 3 in Tulsa and 2 here in Farmington, Minnesota. I want to talk a little bit about your service. You've been a person that has taken service very intentionally over the decades of your life. Here at the Willmar School District Facilities Committee, you've served twice under 2 different superintendents. You have also been a part of the parental representative on Roosevelt Principal Hiring Committee, the YMCA Board, Salvation Army Board, Bethesda Foundation Board, Willmar Ministerial Leadership, and currently on the Food Shelf Board. Wow, that is a lot of service to our community. So we're super excited to have you. And I have to tell you, my heart behind doing this podcast is I love the heart and stories of people and what makes people tick and people that are doing good in the world. And you and your wife, Cindy, are people that I've long identified as do-gooders. You just go out and you cast pebbles and make a difference. And we're super grateful for your leadership and all the ripples that you've created here in the Willmar community that have spread far and wide, and I dare to say, ripples that have spread across the world.
Well, thank you. And you know what? This is such a good fit for you because this is who you are. I mean, we have watched you. You say you watched us. Well, we have watched you. I've been at so many activities where you have volunteered and come and helped ministries raise money, and you're like a force multiplier. Because, you know, I know they set their goal and they think we're gonna make this much. And by the time you're done, they have made this much and get the chance then to be far more successful in what they're doing and serving our community. So thank you for everything you've done.
That's so kind of you to say, Pastor Keith. I'm humbled by your words, and may it all be for the Lord's glory. I will have to tell you, I love to be an auctioneer, but even over being an auctioneer, my greatest joy in life that's at the intersection of what breaks my heart and my greatest passion is encouraging people. I think that encouragement is something that we all need. And so I am really excited about this podcast.
Yeah. And again, that fits you to a T. You're the type of person that people feel better about themselves when they're with you. I don't know if you understand that, but that's true. And I think every guest that you have on here would say the same thing. So I feel better about myself right now.
That's very kind. Thank you. I want to say something sincerely to you, and I want you to receive my words. I've thought about them for many days now, and hopefully I won't get a little bit choked up. And these words are not only to you, Pastor Keith, but equally to your wife. You've made a difference in the lives of countless people. You have walked in your calling, and you've lived out your faith. My husband, Jamie, and I, we have admired you for decades. Your daughter, Anna, and our son, Harris, went to preschool together. They're now juniors in college. I don't know where those years have gone. You've been a pastor for many, many, many years, a community leader, a Christ follower, a husband, a father, a grandpa, a friend to many, and the list goes on and on. When I think about the why behind this podcast and why I wanted you to come on and learn more about you and share your story, is we can all throw a pebble to create a large ripple effect. We do not have to change the world in a big way, but we can all do good. We can find good with intention and make a difference. I'm always amazed and inspired by how one decision, one act of courage, one act of encouragement or kindness, or simply doing the one thing you were prompted to do can often create large ripples and sometimes for generations. And again, this isn't to make you feel good. It's just simply the truth. That is the man you've been alongside of your wife as a team with intention. That's what you two have done for decades. So now we're excited to learn more about you and who you are and hear your heart and be inspired by the intention.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those words.
So if you would, I would love you to start by sharing some of your story. Maybe start when you were younger. And in a couple minutes, can you tell us more, aside from your bio, which is very impressive, share with us some of your story.
Well, quickly, I was raised in Pennsylvania, and we went to church every Sunday in a Presbyterian church, but I didn't understand about having a personal relationship with Jesus. Nothing stuck, and so as soon as I was out of that house, I was out of church. I got my master's degree, wasn't sure where I wanted to land. All I knew was I wanted to get out of winter. So I packed up all my stuff and everything I couldn't fit in my Mazda station wagon. I gave away. I moved to South Carolina without a job, without a place to stay, found a roommate, started mowing grass, ended up getting a job with the state of South Carolina, and ultimately became the director of juvenile court in Charleston, which was all the intake. So we covered everything from a kid who was truant from school to a kid who murdered somebody. And then also supervised probation after they got out of institutions. And I found that I did not want to do that for the rest of my life. I was involved with a woman. She was from Minnesota. She wanted to move back home, which was tough for me because when I moved to South Carolina, I made two vows, Kristine. I would never be in winter again, and I would never be in church again. I ended up as a pastor in Minnesota. So I figured out, okay, God, that's how it works. So I've said, God, I'll never be rich. And I'm still waiting on that one. But anyway, so we moved to Minnesota, again, without a job, without a place to stay, figured it out. I got a job with the Hopkins School District. And it was during that time that I started attending Bloomington Assembly, and everything was just different. I had been pretty closed as an individual. Emotionally. So kind of tap danced around relationships because I was afraid for people to see the real me, that maybe they wouldn't like the real me. And when I realized who Jesus was and what he did for me and how much he loved me regardless, it just, there was a freedom that came over me when I realized that it wasn't just me searching for Jesus. He'd been searching for me this whole time. And that's what was missing in my life, because I was in danger of repeating the same year over and over and over again. I realized something had to change, and it was Jesus. And once I accepted Christ, man, things happened in a rush, and I met my wife at church, and we got married, and then I got baptized, and then we started having kids and made friends for life. I call them 2 a.m. friends. You know, who can you call at 2 a.m. and they won't yell at you. They won't hang it. They'll just say, what do you need? Okay. And I went from having no 2 a.m. friends to having more than I can shake a stick at. And ultimately felt the call of God on my life. Didn't know what that meant because I thought, well, I can't be a pastor. I mean, I haven't done anything pastoral in my life, but I've been an administrator. And then I realized I could be a business administrator at a church. And it just turned out that my home church was changing pastors. He was looking for a new business administrator. And it was like God worked everything out. I didn't have to leave my church, didn't have to leave home, didn't have to go for extra schooling at that point. I just became the business administrator. And then at some point in that job, the pastor said, I see a pastor in you.
You just gave me.
Yeah,
I've got goosebumps.
That surprised me because again, to that point, I hadn't spoken, I hadn't taught a class, I hadn't counseled anybody. I was an administrator. So we hired another administrator, and I went over on the pastoral side, and I thought, well, I need to do something pastoral to, justify my position. So I said, I guess I'll start a Sunday school class. And so I started a class called the James Gang. It was for people that I felt I could relate to, the people that they weren't sure where they fit, because I never was sure. Before Jesus, I was never sure where I fit. And the class just grew and grew. We got to a class of about 200. They had to keep changing rooms. And then it became clear that, okay, maybe that's part of your gifting, that you have the opportunity to put things together and share and be part of people's transformation. And at some point then, we loved our time there. We were there 11 years, thought we'd probably retire there. But God took Bloomington out of our heart and ended up putting Willmar in. We came out to Willmar, and then we've been here for 23 years. So, and this is our home. And even though we're retired, we're hoping that at some point we'll go back and be part of the body at Willmar AG and just be the best supporters of the new pastor that we can be.
It's just amazing when I think of what you just told us and how you never thought that you would ever be a pastor, and how one step led to the next and the next and the next.
There are people who are still surprised that I'm a pastor, and some are in my family, by the way. So,
and you just kept listening to the promptings, but you had to say yes to the call, Pastor Keith. And what you had to do that amazes me and inspires me so much about people. And I think one of the reasons why I'm excited about sharing people's stories and your story, we all have fear. I have fear. We all have fear. But you put your courage ahead of your fear. And you said, Lord, here we go. Can you speak more to that? I'm sure there was times that you were afraid and excited, but you just knew, I need to walk in this calling and live out this faith. And you it sounds so easy when you tell the story backwards, but it took courage, and it took listening to those promptings.
Well, it helps when you're too stupid to realize maybe what all the things that are going on, and you just blindly say, okay, Lord, here we go. I think so often when I said yes, I didn't know what I didn't know. And you just trust the Lord that say, okay, this is, the results are up to you. I'll say yes. I'll do the things you tell me to do, but you're responsible for the results. And I think that's been our approach all along. And that takes a lot of the pressure off. Lord, it's up to you. I did what you said you wanted me to do. I did this. I went to Willmar. We did this. We took a step of faith here. And that's just what we need to do. And if I could say anything to anybody, it's just that, sometimes we're like the Impala. The Impala can jump 30 feet, but he won't jump if he can't see where he's going to land. And I learned I just can't be an Impala and be a true Christ follower. I just have to jump and figure out the Lord's going to land me where he's going to land me.
I love that. That is so true, how most of the time, we want to know where we're going to land. We want to be in control, and we don't want to jump until it's calculated and we know the results. But I think that stepping out in faith, as you and Cindy have done for a lifetime, it has, again, the impact for Christ and his kingdom has been immeasurable by the decisions that you've made.
I would say the other thing I would say is it's a lot easier to step out in faith when you are part of a community and you surround yourself with people who are like-minded, people who want the same thing that you do, people that you have a vital relationship with, people that you can be yourself with, that, you know, the people who are closest to you end up loving and respecting you the most. It's just so much easier to move forward then because you feel like, okay, I'm not doing this alone. You know, I'm part of a team. And that's huge because everybody wants to feel like they belong somewhere. I mean, that's one of the great things that I learned in ministry. And one of the things that I think that has informed my wife and I is there are so many people out there that they're just not sure where they belong. And we wanted to create a culture at our church that said, if you're not sure where you belong here. When I look at the makeup of the church over the years, I feel like we were at least partially successful in doing that. Because if you would go to the church, you would see every age, every economic status, every type of dress, a good ethnic diversity. I mean, it was just people coming out of jail, coming out of rehab, people coming off of Green Lake. I mean, it was just, we all came together, and that's kind of what the early church was. It was master and slave together. No titles, no distinction. Everybody just coming together to worship the Lord, and that's what we wanted.
Mm-hmm. I will say to you, Pastor Keith, although I have attended another church in Willmar for 28 years, I can honestly tell you that I've admired the work of you as a pastor with Cindy right by your side. And something I've greatly admired is exactly what you just talked about. Your ability to have humble confidence for Christ. It was so clear to me when I would listen to your sermons or watch you that you were one of everyone. You weren't better. You weren't this, you weren't that. You made people feel, as you gave us all of those examples, that everyone is part of the larger church body and no person is better than the next. And I think that your ability to lead that team at AG and be that pastor that not only could you preach like it was nobody's business, an amazing preacher, but you've had a gift of humble confidence and you've lived for an audience of one. And you've made everyone feel that nobody's better than the next and we're all equal in Christ. And I really commend you for your leadership as a pastor, leadership in the community. And that's really how you've served that community. I have one interesting question as an auctioneer that might not be interesting to the people that are watching and listening, but, you know, we admire, I think the highest calling is being a pastor. I really do. And I just talked about people not being better than people, but to be a pastor or a missionary, you sit at the highest rung of life's work. When you were on that stage and you're in the middle of your sermon, were you ever thinking in the back of your mind, I'll tell you, as an auctioneer all these decades, I would be outwardly having a conversation with the audience. I'd be selling an item, but at the back of my mind, I might be thinking something completely different, like, Pastor Keith, this item is not selling well. This item's selling amazing. I'm doing good. I'm not doing good. This is an amazing organization. The crowd, it's not about me, but the mission has the crowd in the palm of their hands. Or, oh my gosh, they're not feeling the mission. As an auctioneer, you're speaking one thing, but you might be thinking the complete opposite. When you were on that stage for all those decades, and I want to remind you, your work will never be forgotten. It'll never be forgotten, and the impact, the profound impact that you and Cindy have had. But did you ever pinch yourself and did you ever take yourself back to when you were a kid or a young adult and you said, I'm not going to find myself in cold Minnesota. I'm not going to find myself in the church. Here you're standing with a ton of people listening to you with that humble confidence for the Lord. Did you ever think in the back of your mind, oh my gosh, Lord, you have such a sense of humor, and look at all the yeses I've said yes to. And wow, have you amazed me, Christ, for your kingdom?
Honestly, most of the time when I was preaching, if I had a thought in the back of my mind, it was, is my zipper up? But yeah, I mean, it is amazing how your mind can multitask while you're speaking. And yes, I had those moments where it was almost surreal.
Mhm.
It was almost like, Lord, I can't believe you took this kid and somehow got to hear. And I'll tell you where it often hit me was like on Easter. And which is, there's just something Easter, and especially Good Friday. I mean, people love Easter and what it represents. My favorite is Good Friday. My favorite service, my favorite time. You talk about humility, and I mean that's just the whole nature of the thing. But that weekend, that's that time, and just you see the church fill up, and you're like, Lord, I can't believe you trust me with this responsibility. I can't believe that you trust me with your word. You're trusting me with these people because I know I'm so often the man I'm tempted to be instead of the man you created me to be. I know who I am. I know all this stuff, and yet you've put me here. And so it is surreal, and you do have those thoughts, and then sometimes you have other thoughts that aren't as positive. Like I was preaching once, and a cell phone went off, and so I tried to ignore it, And normally, when a cell phone goes off, you have this sense of somebody's activity because they're trying to shut it off. But I couldn't sense any of that, and it rang. No one cut it off. It just rang. So, okay, we just went on. 30 seconds later, rings again, the whole ringtone. And again, in my mind, as I'm speaking, I'm going, do I address this? Do I say anything? And I thought, nope, I'll stay over on this side. It's ringing over here. So I'm just going to stay on this side of the thing. 30 seconds later, it rings again. And now people are starting to react. They're starting to laugh. They're looking at me like, what are you going to do? And so I'm walking over to that side, and in my head, I'm saying, don't say anything you'll be sorry for later. You don't know what the situation is. And and it stops. I'm about to address it. It starts to ring again, and I realize it is my wife's cell phone on the front pew. She was leading worship at the time.
Oh my God.
And what she would do is during the first service, she and her team would go have coffee.
Sure.
They'd stay in the second service, but first service while I'm preaching, they would go have coffee, and she had left her stuff behind. So it's ringing, and I just looked at everybody and I said, that is my wife's cell phone, which of course then I've lost everybody by this point. I said, let's answer it, shall we? So I walked off the thing and I said, hello. And it is Thomas, our youngest boy. She would go get them between services. And he goes, Dad? I said, yeah. He goes, is Mom there? I said, no, honey, she's not. He goes, Dad? I said, yeah. He goes, I can't find my socks. I said, you can't find your socks? And they're, no. I said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to just stay by the phone. I'm going to have Mom call you. Okay. So I hang up. I mean, there's just pandemonium in the place. And I said, I'm pretty sure my wife is down in the kitchen. Would somebody in 50 people get up? I'll go. Anything to get out of this, and head down. And so, So there are times. We had one time where we had a new custodian, and I'm just preaching my heart out. We had water baptisms that day. And he didn't know that you don't unplug the baptistry during the church service. So the water's draining, and when the last water drains, it makes this huge sucking sound. So I'm in the middle of my sermon with all of a sudden you hear, And I just have to stop and let this thing happen. So yeah, there are things that go on in your head, or you see things. Fortunately, I can't see too much of what's going on in the balcony, which is probably good. But you have those thoughts that your mind multitasks. But most of the time, you are focused on what's happening. And I only had one service where my zipper actually was down. It just happened to be the last service my mother ever attended. My entire family was there for the only time. My brother, his wife, all my kids, and nice job, Pastor Keith. We're so proud of you.
Is your mother still with us?
No, she was. She was 95. We were celebrating her birthday and Anna's birthday, and then that was the last service she could be at, and then she passed away a few months later. So
I can't imagine how proud she was. Couple things that leads me.
Can I say something first?
Please do.
When you talked about the highest calling, and I understand what you're saying there, but I would tell you that the highest calling in my life is husband and father. And there was a time in my ministry when I put pastor over them. So if my wife called or if my kids called and I was busy, I'd say, take a message because I'm counseling somebody, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it wasn't until later, and I felt so ashamed, but I was talking with a colleague, and he said, it's very important to me that my family knows no one is more important than they are. So if they call, I answer. Now, if I'm doing something, I may say, if this is an emergency, can I call you back, whatever. And I thought, oh my heavens, I have spent the last years telling my family, these people are more important than they are. And that's not true. And it's not right. And so if my kids called, if I was in the middle of counseling somebody, I said, hang on one second. I just need to take this. And same with my wife. And that has always been my highest calling.
That's said well, and that's a very good reminder to me. And I'll tell you, Pastor Keith, I too have made that mistake over my career. At 51 years old, I'm figuring that out more and more with time. But there's been plenty of years, and I'm not proud of this, that I've often put my work unintentionally ahead of my family. And so I greatly appreciate that reminder. And that leads me to a thought that I'm excited to ask you. But I first want to share a bit of praise. And you're not looking for my praise, but I want to tell you, because it's a prompting and inspiring for all of us. I already said it, but I want to say it again. What I'm so intrigued by is throughout your life, you and Cindy, you've been prompted and then you've said yes. And you've been prompted and you've said yes. And you've put that courage ahead of that fear. And I think one of the lessons for myself and our audience and listeners is when we have that prompting and we know in our heart and gut and prayers that it's right to say yes. And think of all that's happened in your life and all the lives that have been affected and all the ripple effect that you've thrown a pebble and thrown a pebble and thrown a pebble and said yes and yes and yes. And no, you haven't done it perfectly. And I haven't done it perfectly. And no one does it perfectly. And we're all afraid. But if we can listen to those promptings, again, maybe it's an act of encouragement. Maybe it's an act of kindness. Maybe it's that one next thing to do personally, professionally, a relationship. That is what you've modeled, and with such a humble spirit, and you've kept your heart in the right spot. So as you ended being a pastor at AG, and again, you're not looking for my praise today. It's from the bottom of my heart, and I know I speak for a large audience in this community that you have affected their lives. You will never know the profound impact. Cindy will never know. Your family will never know the profound impact in our community and in the world. It has been profound, and it's all been for Christ and his kingdom. And so Thank you. But I want to tell you, Pastor Keith, your work is not over. Your work is not over. You are not done. I know, knowing you, as my dad would say at 82, Dale says, I'm just getting started. And keep that mantra in your heart for Christ and his kingdom. You're still just getting started. And there's a lot of work as a husband and a father and a grandpa and a community leader and a Christ follower. Don't share with us any secrets, but is there things that you're excited about for the future? And I want to say, and of course you're excited about your family, but what does God have you excited about now? Is there any promptings that you're thinking about that you want to share with us? And then lastly, I do want to talk about your service to the community. Yeah. That's something you've done for decades. But talk about your life right now. And I want to give you a pass. If you're resting for once in your life, that is great. And that's a message for us too. So if you're simply resting and being still with the Lord, that's equally beautiful, if not more.
Well, one of the things that I felt like the Lord laid on my heart was to help rural pastors. Because most people, most of the churches in America are 100 or less. And so many rural pastors, it's them. They don't have a staff. Everything's up to them. They look around, and I just feel like if there's a way that I could come in and help them either with pulpit relief or just talking about my experiences in the rural community and, how do you pastor a community? How do you work with people? How do you, set things up, mission, vision, working with all those things, anything I can do to help. So I'm right now helping a church down in Fulda, Minnesota. I have to drive 2 hours, but it's a church plant, it's 5 years old, and they're just doing great. The pastor's a young guy, former youth pastor, and I would love to pour myself out and help these guys because they're doing great things with the Lord, for the Lord. Sometimes we do great things for the Lord and it's not with the Lord. It's like our thing. And we think, oh, Lord, you're going to love this, But, the funny thing is you talked about saying yes. We didn't always say yes. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when we first were approached by Willmar, we interviewed and then we said no to them.
Even makes the story better.
Yeah. And what happened was we went home and thought people would be like happy, hey, you're not leaving, but there was just no peace and relationships. And I had an 88-year-old prayer partner from Latvia named Lydia. Came through World War II, displaced person, just incredible. Lived in the same house in Bloomington since the late 40s. And I would go over to her house for lunch on Thursdays. And basically, we'd open the Bible. I'd say, well, Lydia, what's the Lord been saying to you lately? And then she talked the rest of the time. And so this Thursday, after we had said no, we're sitting and I said, we said no to Willmar and told her all the reasons why. And she looked at me and she goes, sounds like Abraham doesn't want to put Isaac on the altar. And I thought, can I say shut up to an 88-year-old lady? But all the reasons that I had given her were kind of the earthly, we're in the cities. Do we really want to go to Willmar? Blah, 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 blah. All those things. They were all things that were, in the natural, materialistic, not seeing the big picture. And boy, that just stung. That really stung. And we ended up calling Willmar back because they had said, we think you're the guy, so we're not going to continue our process. And so all these things kept lining up. When we said no, God said, yeah, but. And so we finally said yes. So
then when she said yes, did she say anything? Or when you said yes, did she say anything back to you?
No, she was just, she knew what the right thing was.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
and Lydia was a wonderful lady and a great example of perseverance. I mean, her story, I shared her story in church once. I can't take the time here, but it's just amazing what she went through during World War II and afterwards to get to where she was. So,
Well, and when I think of that and you share about her, it's interesting. They often say we become the sum of the people that we hang out with and the mentors that we surround ourselves with. If we had more time, I'd love to hear about the mentors in your life, Lydia being one of them. I'd love to hear about the books that you love to read, the podcasts that you love to listen to, because it's so fun to hear how you've continued to sharpen yourself. Before we talk about service and your heart of serving the Willmar community within AG Church and outside of the church, I want to ask you a interesting question that I sometimes ask myself. And I'm not equating myself by any means to a pastor, but leadership can be lonely. And I love people. I have a lot of natural joy, but there's times that leadership can be lonely. How have you stayed encouraged? What encourages you? And I know you have a ton of people in your life that care deeply, a lot of friends, a lot of family, but you've spent decades, you and Cindy, encouraging and walking alongside others without a spirit to being better. But at times, my guess is you can feel empty from all of the encouragement. And you get your encouragement from the Lord at the end of the day. But how do you and Cindy stay encouraged?
First of all, encouraging each other. I mean, it's great that we have each other and we know each other and we know each other's rhythms. And when that rhythm is off or that rhythm needs encouragement or whatever else. So that's helpful. And then you hit on it, just surrounding ourselves with other folks. Leadership can be lonely. When I came to be the senior pastor, I had been very involved at my former church as executive pastor, but there were still things that I was not prepared for becoming the senior pastor. You just don't understand sort of what comes with that. It's, again, one of those things you don't know that you don't know. And part of that is just, as you said, kind of the loneliness. I mean, we made a lot of decisions, consensus as staff, but the reality is the buck stops here. And one of the things that helped me was when I learned the difference between pressure and stress. Because they both, when you're in a difficult situation, you feel pressure. And the difference is when you don't know what to do, you're in a difficult situation and you just don't know what to do, that is stressful. Okay. When you're in a difficult situation, but you do know what to do, that's pressure. Okay. And I feel like for most of my ministry career, I may have been under pressure, but didn't experience a lot of stress because I knew what to do. And that was the first thing is you inquire of the Lord. Okay, Lord, it's your ministry, your people, your family, what do you want done? And then you move off in that way. And that makes such a difference. The other thing I think that's really important for leaders to understand is, to me, there's a number one purpose for being a leader. I mean, leadership, there's so many things. You could spend, a podcast talking about leadership and all the aspects of leadership. But to me, and maybe people don't agree with me, but I think there's one thing that absolutely has to be true. If you're going to be a leader, you have to be a person who gives hope more than anything else. Because if you're a leader that doesn't provide hope, where are your people going? What are they going to do? People, without hope, people they lose heart. And so I always wanted to be someone, regardless of the situation, hey, we have hope. Hope is the melody of the future, and faith allows us to dance to it today. And that was kind of our approach. So let's make sure as leaders that we are hopeful, and that way we can then extend that hope to others.
I love that. That is so, so encouraging and a wonderful reminder to myself and all of us to extend hope and what that does for the people that we surround ourselves with. I want to tell you, too, that when you talk about pressure, another great nugget that you've shared, let's call it a pebble today, that you didn't carry the pressure yourself. You said, Lord, I'm going to give you the pressure. I'm going to give you the weight. And then I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to try to surrender to you. And when we try to carry it ourselves, boy, is it a heavy load.
It is.
But when we surrender, now I'm just as guilty as the next. This is something I'm continually working on, is surrendering and not carrying the weight in my humanness, but giving that weight up and letting him carry the weight. And boy, does that make it a more joyful, peaceful, lighter load.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate you
There's a
sharing
difference
that.
between surrender and commitment. And it's very nuanced, because they're both a good thing. I make a commitment, but when I make a commitment, I'm in charge of that. I decide how long that commitment is going to be, how much of a commitment I'm going to make, all sorts of things. When you surrender, you're not in charge of anything. And we're asked to surrender. Now, you're right. Nobody surrenders perfectly, but it's the attitude. It says, because what's the sign of surrender? You put your hands up. And now, whoever you surrender to is in charge of who you are and where you go and what you do. And so we've tried to adopt that attitude of surrender even more than commitment. I know we often in church, we talk about commitment, we ask for commitments. Again, nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, what the Lord is looking for is surrender. And you want to get to that next level of faith. It takes that surrender. It's like water baptism. When you go back, we tell people, hold on to your nose and like this, because your natural inclination is you want to put your hands out and stop, because it's such a helpless feeling. When you go back in the water, you just feel totally helpless. And I think that's intentional, because it's that attitude of you're now surrendering your life to the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Thank you. Excellent, excellent. You know what I should have done at the beginning of this is just said, hey, let's start with a 30-minute sermon, because
you want to lose your audience? Yes, go ahead and do that.
You are so, so blessed with the ability to teach. Thank you so much. You have so the other thing, aside from, again, I talked about you being a Christ follower and a husband and a dad and a grandpa and a friend to many and a pastor for all these decades. And then we could talk for the next 3 hours about your heart of service. I don't even know where to start. So there's so many amazing things as to what you've done in your life. And I appreciate how you've stepped out in courage. You're confident, you're humble, you give all glory to the Lord. I want you to take this in the direction that you want to, but I just want to share 2 things that I think are really special. And then you speak, they're all equally special,
Sure.
But speak to a few that resonate on your heart the most today. Because my kids had the ability to attend JAM at times.
Oh,
so
sure.
We've been a part of Refuge Church for 28 years. And our kids went to the programs at our church, but our kids also went to the programs at your church. And I was just amazed. Hundreds and hundreds. Again, there's so much we could say today about the good of your years at AG Church. But one crazy, amazing example that I just can't get over is the JAM program.
Yeah,
and
it used to be VBS. Now we call it Summer Jam.
Summer Jam. And then I think about what you did to walk alongside people during COVID. You take this in whatever direction your heart wants to share today. But my point is, Pastor Keith, is back to that heart of service, back to those yeses. You could have just sat on the couch with Cindy, and instead you said, nope, we're gonna have jam. And then God bless that, and that just went crazy. Then you said, no, it's COVID. We're not going to just sit on the couch. We're going to do this and this and this and this. And that's where not only are we so grateful, and the ripples in the community we cannot measure, but what intrigues me about you and where we're inspired for all of us listening and watching and myself to take that next step of obedience, you said all these yeses. And you've done all these things within the church and outside of the church. Just share whatever you'd like to share. But I want to thank you on behalf of our community for, I can't even articulate how special and the difference that it's made in the lives of others.
It starts with a biblical foundation. You know, when in John 13, and Jesus washes the disciples' feet. No one else is coming forward, so he says, I'll do it. And then he says, what I have done is an example for you. You need to be washing each other's feet. And when you do things like that, he says, you will be blessed. So who doesn't want to be blessed? So if I serve others, and one of our values of the church is serving is our privilege. So right away, there's an immediate, wow, it almost feels selfish, like I get blessed. But then when you serve others, then you help them see the value God has placed on them. So when we do our summer jam, and we have 600 kids there, and a lot of them are not from our church, and you can't believe some of the home situations these kids are coming from. And we believe it's easier to build a kid than to fix an adult. Okay. So we get a chance for a week to love on these kids, and they get to see that they're lovable, they're valuable, they're acceptable, a message that they may not hear a lot, at home at times. And so it's just a privilege for us that people get to see their value. When COVID came, it's like, okay, God, what do you want us to do? Well, one of the things we did was we established a long distance learning center. We had our Epic building. And I talked to the school officials, and they said, as long as you do everything according to our standards, we'll support this. And so we had to have people, so much separation. We had volunteers that came in and tutored kids anywhere from elementary to high school. And so we did the long distance learning center and set that up. And then that Easter, just felt impressed. And this was spur of the moment. I should have talked to my board ahead of time, but they were very gracious. And I just said, as we received the offering, we were outside. The service was outside. I said, everything that you give today, we are going to turn around the entire offering. We're going to give to Crossroads Counseling because they are being overwhelmed. COVID, the mental health issues just rose tragically, and they were being overwhelmed, and so we were able to give an offering of $45,000.
Wow! Just
to Crossroads to say, if you need to hire more people, whatever you need to do. If people can't afford, then this will pay for that, and that sort of deal. So those are just the types of things. You want to meet a need when you serve people. There's an aspect of mercy. Those two gifts kind of come together. And mercy, asks one question. It doesn't ask, well, do they deserve it? Mercy simply asks, do they suffer? And if they do, then we need to do something about it. So that's been a lot of fun. We tried to, one of my cultural values, speed of the leader, speed of the team. And so as a pastoral staff, we had service projects. We tried to have at least one a month where we would go out and just as a group do something. So we went to Bethesda a number of times. We painted stuff for them. We put garden boxes together. When Lakeland was opening up, we went and helped teachers physically set up their classrooms, putting desks up and things like that. I have a list of things. We did the Hope for the City. We distributed food shelf when they do the produce distribution. We'd help with that. We had a single mom. We have a single moms ministry at the church. Most of the moms that come don't attend our church. So it's a great way to reach out. And one of them who did attend our church we knew about, she was a teacher down at Bird Island in the elementary. And so we went down and painted her classroom. They didn't have any money for renovation stuff. So we were able to paint her classroom real bright colors and a lot of fun for her. And so we just tried to do things like that, tried to find ways that we could be an encouragement to the people around us. And then when we also wanted our church to know that we're not asking you to do anything that we wouldn't do ourselves. And then, we had the larger things with we helped out. We had sent over teams when they built Destination Playground at Robbins Island, and just want to be part. We didn't want to just ask people to join us. We wanted to go out and join. What's happening? What are you doing? How can we be part of that? And, I told our church I would love to get us to the point where you couldn't write an accurate history of Willmar without including the AG Church, because we just wanted to be good partners. Probably one of the most impactful things we did was, we did our night of music Christmas performance. And when I got here, I thought, they said this is our big evangelical outreach, but 90% of the people that come are Christians. So really, I don't know how great the outreach was. I said, but let's turn around and use this then for God's glory. Let's make it a blessing. So when I came, I said, we are going to receive a free will offering, but we're going to give it away. We're not going to keep it to offset our expenses. We'll pick a community organization every year and give it away. And until we got knocked out of the box by COVID, that's what we did. So whether it was Safe Avenues or Hope Pregnancy Center or Salvation Army, or we even set something up with the county where they set up a new fund that they didn't have. They called it the Good Neighbors Fund because it came from our church. And so in that time, we were able to give away about $335,000 to the community over those years. So that's something that we've just enjoyed, and we've heard a lot of ripple effect back. And so, and there's just a lot of things that we've tried to do with the schools, partnering with businesses, partnering with other nonprofits, partnering with other churches. I met regularly with your pastor and the pastor from Living Hope and the pastor from First Covenant. We met on a monthly basis because we knew we were better together. And we tried to do things, where can we converge? Where can can we, have this sort of energy that we can come together and, be better together than we are solo. And so that's been fun as well, just serving with other churches together. So,
well, and again, your heart for service, that you've modeled, Pastor Keith, not only with your staff, as when you were the senior pastor at AG, with your parishioners, modeling that in the community, modeling that today, visiting, like that overall arching heart for service is, it
needs to be a lifestyle, not an activity. I mean, if you look in the scriptures, Jesus didn't say, hey, do you have a few spare hours that you could give me?
That's so true.
But he said, would you follow me? And so when you make it a lifestyle, it just changes everything, because now you're not worried about somebody taking advantage of you, or you're not weighing the cost. You're not doing all the things. I mean, yeah, in our humanness, do we still do some of that stuff? We do, but it gets outweighed by the biblical mandate that that says, hey, love your neighbor as yourself.
You bet.
So
there's 100 questions that I'd love to ask you, maybe 1,000, truthfully, but there's just two more things I want to touch on today for your time and the time of our listeners. But this has been fascinating, and you've inspired me today. You've spoke to me. The nuggets that you've shared with me will sharpen me as a person, and I'm a big believer that iron sharpens iron, and that's one of the great reasons of the why behind sitting down and talking to leaders like yourself. But when you talk about having a heart for service and it being a lifestyle, I want to bring this back to you being a husband and a dad and a grandpa. That mindset will change generations. And that's not only who you were as a pastor, who you are as a community leader, but that is who you are within your home, in your own family. It's what you're modeling within your own family.
Well, you have a coffee problem. I also have a coffee problem, and that is I don't like coffee. And that's one reason why I thought I could never be a pastor, because whoever heard of a pastor doesn't drink coffee. But anyway, I think one of the things that was very important for me is that for my family, that the person they saw behind the pulpit was the same person who walked in the door.
Wow.
So they didn't feel like we're putting something on for people out there. But when you come home, you're a totally different person. And I tried to warn the church in the same way about that is, listen, I'm going to be the person in front of you that I am at home. And so that may not always portend well for you as well.
Sure.
And I think that genuineness, that authenticity, that the kid, because it's tough being a pastor's kid. I don't think I necessarily understood, recognized at times what my kids maybe went through, being and especially, you're not just a pastor's kid, but, of that church, the Pentecostal church, the wacky church, they're swinging on chandeliers and, all that stuff, which, by the way, we stopped doing that a long time ago. So now.
I love that reminder. And that's one of the reasons, Pastor Keith, that I wanted to visit with you, is because that is who you are. You ooze authenticity. You are so real, whether it's, back in your preaching days, just a short time ago, or in Cashwise, you ooze authenticity. And I love the reminder to all of us, try to live your life the same at work as you do at home, and vice versa, and how we can model that. I have one fun last question for you. But before I ask you this, I want to sincerely thank you for the time, the heart, the sharing. I want to thank you again for your leadership, your pastoral work, the man you are, the husband you are, the dad, the grandpa, the friend. It goes on and on and on.
The living legend, basically, is what you're saying.
The living legend, truthfully. You're so humble, and I speak for a large community of people that has been greatly impacted by you and your family. And I sincerely mean that, and I'm just extremely grateful for all of the ripples that you have casted, that we've already talked about, so many we haven't talked about, that you'll never be able to measure. And so a sincere thank you for your work, who you are. Greet Cindy, and the continued work that you're doing and will do. It's far from over. It's far from over. So just very, very thankful for who you are and the impact that you've had. And just listening to you and what we've learned today will continue to have an impact on the lives of others. But I'd like you to have the opportunity to throw out the last pebble. What would you like to share to leave our audience that is watching and listening? You've already told us so many great things to think about that have sharpened us, but is there anything else that you would like us to hear today that will leave an impact on our thinking? And as you're thinking, I haven't memorized this yet, but Mother Teresa, I didn't even realize when we thought of the name One Pebble Podcast, I didn't even realize this till after the fact. But Mother Teresa is someone that I've always admired. She's been one of my many heroes. And here's what Mother Teresa said: "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples." And that is just who you've been, who Cindy's been. And that's really the intention behind your life. Is there one last pebble that you would like to throw out for us to consider?
And I think Mother Teresa is a great example of this. And that is humility is really the preparation for service. I mean, if you go in to serve and you don't have, it's hard to wash feet in a judge's robe. You know, you have to be humble. You have to recognize that this is God's calling. I remember the story of D.L. Moody. It was like the greatest evangelist in the 19th century. He had this big conference. He brought over all these pastors from England. And at night, the first night, they all put their shoes out in the hall because they were used to, in England, they have what they called hall servants. They would come and they would polish and clean the shoes overnight and put them back in place. Well, this was America. There were no hall servants. And when Moody realized what was happening, he collected, the greatest evangelist, the guys put on the conference, he collected the shoes personally and in his room overnight, cleaned and polished. And the only reason the secret got out was a friend visited him and said, "What are you doing?" And he cleaned all the shoes, he put them all back, and none of his guests knew. They just assumed that the hall servants did this, but it was him. And that's amazing. Humility. And Mother Teresa and, a lot of our great leaders, they're, oftentimes they're put in roles where they have to take charge or be in authority. And you don't necessarily see the humility, but that's the preparation to be able to take on that role and to do it well, to do it in a godly fashion. So I think, the Bible says humility comes before honor. And so that's for me, I suppose that's the great starting point is making sure that your heart is right, your heart is humble, and then it's, Lord, where do you want to go? Mm-hmm. So that's my word.
A wonderful reminder to keep our heart in the right place.
Yep.
Pastor Keith, it's been a joy.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
Fun. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All the best.
I'll be watching.
Yes. Thank you. We're grateful.
Yeah.
This has been the One Pebble Podcast. One pebble, so many ripples. What will you do to make a difference?